All right. I don't know how much time I have to talk. Probably less than an hour, but I figured I'd just jump on and see if anyone was around. Anybody wanted to talk about anything. I am lots of interesting stuff going on. Obviously, people still processing the news. I watched the stream with Christian Baxter from last night. That was pretty good. Um, the guy's talking about all the Charlie Kirk stuff. And then there's a lot of people talking about what their church did or didn't do, or their pastor regarding, mentioning it. And some people are making like really bold proclamations about like you shouldn't go to a church that didn't talk about it. And I don't know. Our pastor spoke about it a little bit after the sermon, said a few words. I thought it was pretty good. Good, it was enough of an acknowledgement. I felt like it was important to acknowledge stuff just because um, it's what's on a lot of people's minds. So, people go to church to have, um, for all the reasons that are connected to their life. And so you should talk about the things that are happening that people want to talk about. But I would talk about anything if anybody wants to come on. It doesn't necessarily have to be about that. I also saw Matt and David had a pretty interesting discussion. And it was kind of about how you can have better understanding between different traditions when you recognize the shared source of their origin. They were talking about things like the modes of baptism and communion and how those work out in different ways. And that's a really kind of a metagelical thing. So I think most people probably get with that pretty well on here. And I think that's kind of an interesting topic because I did speak to Chad a little bit yesterday too, and just talking about like what's going on with the metagelical moment, and it seems like Jonathan Peugeot, had said, in his video about the post-war consensus or wherever he was in the clip, you're talking about it, that people almost, are clamoring for some kind of a clarifying event, like a war. And I think that the event of Charlie Kirk's killing is tragic, but it seems to have provided some of that clarification in a less destructive way than a full-blown war. Now, as to what follows from that is yet to be seen. But for me, it was very interesting just to see different responses of like different Christians, especially, and where they want to draw these lines. Like some of them took away the. Some of them seem to jump to the conclusion of like we need to be more serious about force, and that seems like, well, okay, I'm not taking any of you people seriously because that's does not seem like a useful solution to me, especially when you have a lot of other people that are just doing things like going to church. It seems like people have taken a more positive response to what happened. So those who think that it's a moment for political strategy, I think, are missing the mark. I think because I know I said this in the thing I wrote a little bit. I can't remember if I said it in the video I made, but I was thinking about like, obviously Charlie Kirk was known for being a conservative speaker, but there's so much of the kind of left, perhaps not leftist, but the more left-leaning progressive ideology also stems from Christianity. And what we have of it now maybe is sort of a warped version. But if somebody, if the people that held those beliefs had the kind of integrity that someone like Charlie Kirk had, they would work. And I think probably at different points in time that was the case. I think back certainly, during the abolitionist movements, and probably there was probably a lot of people in the time of the civil rights that were genuinely situating those things in their faith. And so it's not necessarily that the ideas per se are wrong. They've kind of reached an extreme point where they're not as they don't make as much sense, because we've gone past like the issues of like equal rights for people of different races and then trying to make it about like sexual identity. It's not really the same thing. Um, but it's so much more about the way a person lives their life. That's really what matters. That's what makes the biggest impact. And, that's on the one hand encouraging because it means we don't have to always figure out all the right ideas exactly. But it's also harder work because it's harder to just live the right way. Um, so it's good and bad. But I don't know. Those are some of the thoughts I've been having about it. So I think that does go a long way to create some of this clarifying aspect of events. It's kind of shown like I don't think like there's a big problem with like the right. There's such a broad spectrum of people in that, because you have like the really normie Christians that are very sincere and they're in there. And then there are these more militant aspects of people in there, or the people that are getting concerned about or people that are focused on identity stuff, I guess you could say. That's why it's sometimes called like woke right. Woke right definitely is a sort of a thing, but uh, uh, so it's not like so. There needs to be a clarifying and a separation in that group, I think. But it kind of shows there's not really a lot to be offered. There's not a lot to offer from the other side. The other side's ploy was, if you give us complete control eventually, once we get it, then we'll have utopia. And I think that's kind of even that's what maybe influenced the shooter. Was just, it's this thing that you have to sacrifice everything to this machine in order for it to give you what you want. But that machine is insatiable. It's never satisfied, and it's a false god. So it will never give you what you desire either. And so that's kind of the problem. And my hope is that, having made that sacrifice, that he will come to see the bad fruit that it produces, that he would come to repent. And that probably is another concern, I think, because a lot of people are like, obviously it's probably going to take a long time before there's like a trial or anything like that, but a lot of people are thinking, oh, we have to have the death penalty. And that's certainly like the more conservative position. I don't necessarily know if it would do the best good. And one thing I was actually thinking about that maybe could work in an interesting way is, if you think about what that young man, whatever the trial is, he's going to have some sort of defense. And I wonder if it wouldn't, in some way, really be not like not that I think that he would be acquitted, but like if they were going to say something like an insanity plea or whatever, what would you do? You'd have to point the influence. You'd have to pin the influence on these things that he was being indoctrinated by. And that way, you could even have your defense of the shooter condemning the really destructive aspects of this culture, which is kind of this algorithmically driven brainwashing. Now, I don't know how if it would necessarily, that could backfire in the way of creating some sort of censorship, but maybe it would just make people a lot more aware of what it is, and people would start demanding more transparency and less of the kind of nudging influence that we get. And then when I was thinking about that, that brought to mind in Paralandra when Ransom is being provoked by the unman there, and he just keeps like saying his name and waking him up and keeping him from falling asleep, and just realizing like, yeah, that's kind of a like C.S. Lewis saw that as a satanic method, and he probably thought about it more in the way that soldiers were tortured and POWs and stuff by like these insidious means, but it's really similar to how a lot of these social media influences can affect us. Just getting the little drip, drip, drip of pointing hatred at somebody else's, at somebody else, influencing us to think about these things in a certain way through that slow stream of messaging that keeps us on edge, keeps us stressed out, and at the same time, it makes us kind of addicted to it because we think, oh, well, this is better than than facing the loneliness or something. And really, it's this nihilism that just this nihilism exists in these communities, and people feed each other nihilistic messages. So I don't know. Those are some thoughts I had. I was hoping somebody would be around to come in. I see a few people are watching, but maybe everybody's busy. Let's see if anybody's saying anything. Yes, catch up. Well, you don't really have to catch up. Chat's here. Jacob didn't like the message that my pastor gave. I thought it was pretty good, all things considered. Didn't necessarily agree with it all in all, but thought he did a pretty good job. I mean, I was glad he said something. Yeah, I definitely think that to not say anything would be kind of irresponsible. Come on in. Probably only going to go for another 20, 30 minutes anyway, so. Oh, you tried to phone my real phone. I'm actually on the computer. Well, what was the other thought? I had one other thought. Oh, well, I guess it was just the thing of, if you're in church and your pastor decides you shouldn't talk about stuff like this or whatever, it kind of is the other side of this thing where it's like people want to say, well, was Charlie Kirk really like a Christian? Was Christianness his important? Hello, Chad.
How's it going?
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah, ever since I got rid of my StreamYard account, I think they don't really like me. So I've had issues trying to jump on live stream using my phone, and it's just trying to be. It'll eventually go haywire. I just think I really upset them, but I can't really afford to do StreamYard.
Yeah, it's like really expensive. I wish there was something that was like a little cheaper or cheap. The free version is very limited even here. Like,
Yeah. Well, I was meaning like it's even expensive in terms of having kind of like this like constant excessive ability to like be online. I mean, I wanted to be able to kind of have a little bit of an excuse to make it more difficult, so it's working out.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It's funny because I think the free version, it's like you can do like five hours or something.
Yeah, but can you just keep like deleting the hours?
No, well, so they made so there's like you can have maybe it's 5 hours of recording time, and then I think they like reduced that to like 2 in the free version. You can record like 2 hours, and maybe you can stream like 15 because there's like 1 month where I came close. I think that's what it was, like 15 hours you can stream, but you can't record it if it's streaming. It doesn't really matter because it's on YouTube, But yeah, they're trying to make their money. I mean, I guess they just tried to get everybody hooked by being free.
It's going wacko on. Anyways, good to see you. Hope you're well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I should probably go back and listen to what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's your spirit, man? What's up?
My spirit?
Yeah, are you up there? Are you like down?
I'm pretty good. I mean, I've seen a lot. I've seen so much more. My algorithms have been blessed by showing me so much more good than bad stuff, like coming, in response to this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm glad about that, and I think, yeah, I mean, like kind of some of what I was saying before is just like I wonder what like people will be responding with the what happens to the shooter.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people are going to want to say like, oh, he should get executed, but I don't know. It's like a real Cain and Abel thing going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, and I think I've seen people be like, "Oh, well, hopefully he comes to Christ, but you should also still be executed." And I'm like, okay, if you really want him to believe, if you really want him to believe that you're sincere about your desire for him to come to know Christ, you shouldn't put a time limit on how long he gets to be there. And especially when it's like,
yeah,
really be putting someone in prison for life. Like, yeah, there's probably there's problems with that because like overcrowded prisons or something like that. But it's like, well, that is just that is saying like you deserve death, but we're going to keep you alive. We're just going to make sure you don't hurt anybody else. Like that is a merciful act, and so it's like it seems like that would be the kind of merciful act that would actually make somebody believe what you have to say about God loving them.
Yeah.
I think that is what happens with Cain too. God puts a mark on him and says nobody gets to kill this guy.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, isn't there enough? I mean, how much blood does it take to quench thirst? You know what I mean? I just don't see. It just doesn't make sense to me at all that people would want like the. What makes sense to me is that people like myself can have their moments of foolishness and kind of blindness, but at the end of the day, I don't like. I heard this guy. He was saying that he would hope that he had like almost like a Pauline experience where, you know, like his eyes were open and that he actually would, like have basically no. He would like be able to. He would like desire repentance above all things, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Oh.
Well, no, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's even like when Peterson talks about how like like a 2-year-old is like the most violent person on earth or something, or like and like if you have to train a kid to like not be violent by the time they're like 4, or else they're going to have real problems. And so it's like if you think about it, like we as parents and other kids and whoever else is caring for kids like takes it like as as a course of action that you're going to receive lots of blows from a little child and you're not going to repay them in kind, but it doesn't mean that it's like the action is still the same. The only difference is, it doesn't hurt when it's from a 4-year-old. I mean, it can hurt, especially if they hit you in the junk. But it does, but it does a lot more damage when somebody gets older. So you still have to have the mercy. Sorry, Chad's service seems to have dropped out. You still have to show them the mercy and say, like, I'm going to be the one that accepts these blows unanswered so that you can learn to not harm other people. And so we all kind of learn that as children, or if we don't, we become criminals. So the retributive justice thing is not very easy to execute, I guess you could say. Teo's caught up. You should come in and say hello. Otherwise, I just have to think of more things to say. Well, okay, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So I was going to say, like, some people seem like they want to stick with the church as like private thing, or like church is about God stuff, and so don't bring outward things in. And then people want to debate like, oh, well, Charlie Kirk was really a political guy. I mean, he was a Christian, but was that like the most important thing about him? Did he really, and or saying like he didn't really get killed for being a Christian, he got killed for being political. But I think that's kind of a cope answer, because it seems very clear that he had the kind of integrity where he saw those things as being very interconnected. And when you live in a country that has freedoms of like freedom of speech and religious liberty and things like that, you do have to maintain those things and defend them, and in order to do that religious stuff that otherwise you want to think of as separate. And so, I think it's easy for churches to like just assume they're going to have a non-profit tax-free status for a long time. But at some point, somebody might decide, the government might decide that their buildings are not being put to good use and they could seize them. And there's certainly countries where stuff like that does happen, or where they just can't even build churches because there's no way to get that right. So you can't really totally separate faith and politics and things like that. And of course, I mean, that's in the Bible. Christ is a king. He's not just a preacher or teacher, and David is a king, but he's also a spiritual leader for the nation. So it's like these things are connected. And I mean, that gets you it gets you into the whole Christian nationalism territory, which is sticky, I guess, in some ways. But I think that's why I think the Constitution outlines well enough how to protect those things. The main difference is who is in charge of actually running the government and making the decisions. And so at that level, well, it just means Christians do need to be more involved with some of that stuff. It might not be the most comfortable. I think there's probably a lot of tough decisions you have to make if you're a person in power and in a position of political authority. But like, Christians shouldn't shy away from that. And the opportunity that we have, which we do still have, is a very good one, kind of unprecedented in history. So those are pretty much thoughts that I've had for a long time. So it doesn't really change anything that much, but still something to think about. And I don't know, I guess maybe just people don't think about things through that much. And then there was, let me see if I can find it. There was one other interesting thing I saw. Let's see if I can find it. It was, yeah. So, of course, the interesting thing is you have all these Christian people that are really excited about people going to church. And then this thing happens in Utah, which means that there's like a lot of Mormons around. And I noticed like Mark Driscoll was saying, he was saying a lot of good stuff about people going to church, and that here's how you find, like, he wanted to do a thing about finding a good church. And then he starts talking about Mormons, and that it's all like a demonic cult, and they're all there's going to be no Mormons in heaven, because I guess that's the thing with identifying the shooter. Like, if he's raised Mormon, he's a Mormon, even though it seems like he's really rebelled against the values that his parents tried to instill in him. And then I saw, let me see, I'll put this out here. I guess I can put it up. Let's figure out how to do this. All right. Orson Scott Card, author of Ender's Game, Mormon, talking about the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk. And like many other people, including myself, he says, didn't know anything about this guy before this week, but now that I've learned about him, I'm very impressed and sad that such a good person was harmed. I'm not going to read all the stuff he said in here, but there was something in here that he said that was, I thought, pretty good and helpful. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, from what I have heard, Charlie Kirk's primary message was faith in Jesus Christ. Years ago, when science fiction was still an open-minded, accepting community, I used to do a presentation at conventions called the Secular Humanist Revival Meeting. Though my church does not have revival meetings, I was familiar with the format, and so was the audience. So that was a good time. So that a good time was had by all. But despite the title, by the end, it was very clear that I was a believing Christian who believed that there was no contradiction between honest science and honest religion. At every one of these revival meetings, a few people would come up to me and confess that they had been coming to conventions for years, but had always hidden their religious faith to avoid embarrassment. By openly proclaiming my faith in the midst of an entertaining show, I had made them feel for the first time that a person of faith could belong to that community. I had nothing like the effective ministry of Charlie Kirk, but I certainly left no doubt that a person could write books like mine and still be a faithful, practicing believer in God and member of a community of faith. I remember when I was 10 years old, my dad coming into my room as I was reading a book about early humans, and concerned that evolution might confuse me, saying, "Scott, remember, when religion and science disagree, one or the other or both of them are wrong." At that time, I didn't understand the context of his statement, but I never forgot those words because my father was telling me that our understanding of our own religion is not final, not complete. We might be wrong about some things, so I didn't grow up within a wall of unassailable religious dogma. Instead, I was free to explore everything and reach my own conclusions. You know, the kind of education that American universities work so hard to prevent. And then this was one, whatever. I retweeted this one because it was good. I can't remember what he said. Here, let's see. Now that I know more of him, I join readily with Charlie Kirk in saying, marriage is a good thing. Having children is a good thing. Yes, you'll make mistakes in both enterprises, but so what? Keep loving your spouse and your kids and keep moving forward. Your kids will find their own way. They may grow up to fill you with joy and pride. They may break your heart. No guarantees. It's called life. It's living. Stuff happens, good and bad, and God does not intervene to spare the righteous from pain. His plan is for us to live and die, to be healthy or sick, firm or crippled. Whatever matters is that no matter what, we will demonstrate, we will discover who we are, what we're made of. And one day, as I've been reminded of by newscasters of all people, we should hope to enter into the divine presence, having left our bodies behind, and hope to be greeted with the words, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." Now, Mark Driscoll wants to say that he worships a demon and is not going to be in heaven. But you know, looking at the humility that's in that previous message, well, he doesn't he doesn't believe that his understanding of religion is final, and I don't think that's I don't disagree with that. I don't think it's final, and as well as our understanding of science, which, you know, was the context he's speaking of there. And so, you know, it struck me as this odd thing in that I think this is a blind spot of the current moment with evangelical Christians, because we love the power of conversion. We love when somebody who is an unbeliever, somebody like a murderer, comes to know Christ and they repent and their life is changed. At the same time, those of us who believe want for our own children that they would not fall away from but that they would follow us in our beliefs. And yet when you have people that grow up in Mormonism, which is not the same as evangelical Christianity, but does have a lot of similar language, and I'm sure that the average people probably are understanding these things in ways more similar to our own understanding than we recognize, though they might use different words and phrases to communicate it, and that might be where some of the disconnect is. But they've been vastly more successful, like on average, of teaching their children to follow in that steps. And then we would want to condemn them in this thing that they've been successful for because they don't have, because of the difference in propositional beliefs and things like that. And, it's interesting to hear a Mormon, Orson Scott Card, say something of this nature with this humility. That's like, well, why can't we look at them as charitably as they're looking at us, I guess you could say. I mean, that wasn't even the context of, essentially from reading it, it's like there's no problem with Charlie Kirk not being a Mormon for him to say Charlie Kirk is a Christian. And, I'm probably like in a weird minority of this, definitely among evangelicals. But I think that it's something that needs to be probably thought about more. That's an area of bias that a lot of my tribe has a closed-mindedness about, I guess you could say. Yes. Bunch of American metagelicals. Of course, we do have Adam's Fall, our Mormon metagelical in this space. I probably should try to have a conversation with him. It's just hard for me to do the scheduling thing, but we'll see. Maybe when I'm home or when the baby comes, can have some more opportunities for discussions. That would be good. But I mean, I think, and that's the thing. It's like, well, it's not like metagelicalism is evangelicals and Catholic and Mormon. It's some evangelicals and some Catholics and some Mormons and some people that aren't in the thing, and Sean. Do I know Sean? I don't know if I know Sean. Like, because another good one was Malcolm and Simone's video that came out on Friday, I think. And, like Simone was obviously very clearly moved, and they were both basically saying a lot of stuff of like, wait a minute, like Charlie Kirk, he's saying the safe stuff and he's just a dad with kids. And like, I am technically on Discord and never actually on Discord. That's the problem. I hear that's where the cool kids hang out. I just don't think about it. Yeah, but Malcolm and Simone, it's like, okay, the things that they are for and the things that they are against, it seems like they want there's some points of contention, but it's like, it seems like it lines up more so than, in my mind, for like who you want to live nearby or who you want to build a community around, that they're at least more than just co-belligerents, that they could be allies, if not somebody that you live in communion with. So it's just an interesting thing. And I think that this sort of event is providing a clarifying moment to some degree. And I think probably in the best thing to do is to kind of just focus on the best parts of what we see going on and highlight those things and let that be what develops as a lasting legacy out of a tragic moment. So, yeah. Must Christ be at the center of the Metagelicals module? I think Christ is at the center, whether we know it or not, whether somebody else knows it or not. I mean, like, that's the thing that I think, like, the fact that people are like so bothered by, or, disturbed by Charlie Kirk dying, even people that are like his political opponents and stuff like that, like, the thing that people liked about him was his Christ likeness. So I think that, maybe you don't know it in the way. It's the God of your own understanding. But if you understand it, it's going to put a change in you. And I think, obviously, we just say, take the thing of Charlie Kirk is willing to put himself in that position to be outspoken because he wants to leave a legacy for his children. And then and he was willing to lay down his life for that. It shouldn't have been. It's sad that his life was ended then, but it was a very Christ-like way to live. And I think that that's what is drawing people together. So I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if they would identify as metagelical. I feel like the identification of metagelical is probably something that you probably need to embrace the evangelical aspect of it. Like, and I mean, I don't know. I guess that's the thing, because it's kind of like the frame question or whatever. And if you make the meta frame, the meta frame is the one it's the new frame that we've all discovered that's bigger than all of our pre-existing frames. And, but so long as you realize that God's still in control of that, then, it's a place where we can all get along, where we can all have our own little sandboxes to play in within the bigger space. But how aware is everybody of that larger framework that we're in? Not everybody has the same level of awareness. So, I mean, I don't know who else would be interested in using the term metagelical other than like evangelicals. But like, I would consider it to be a category that's broader than, certainly beyond just people who openly proclaim the name of Jesus. Yeah. Well, getting kind of hungry, so I think I might call it a day. Appreciate Chad's ability to come on. Not all times are convenient for all people, so I get that. I might have more opportunities to do this at this kind of time of day with our kids' new school schedule. So maybe I'll do it again tomorrow or some other time this week. See you later.